In 1599 at Osaka, a dying Taiko offers Lord Toranaga sole regency until his young son and heir, Yechio Nakamura, is 16. Lord Toranaga declines as he sees this as a motive for his enemies to unite and eliminate both him and Yechio, so Taiko orders the formation of the Council of Regents, which he hopes will peacefully share equal power until Yechio comes of age. It is composed of Lord Toranaga, who is a Minowara, a highly regarded bloodline whose ancestors dominated Japan, carrying with them a divine mandate, the highest rank called Shogun, Lord Sugiyama, a descendant of the richest samurai family in Japan, Lord Ono, a feared warrior whose leprosy led him into his Christian faith, Lord Kiyama, whose greed and ambition greatly influenced his Christian faith, and Lord Ishido, the caretaker of the castle and Lord Toranaga's chief rival. Taiko asks Toranaga to protect and teach Yechio important lessons he needs to learn. Aboard Dutch merchant vessel Erasmus in 1600, English pilot John Blackthorne reports to the captain that they're sailing on white sand, reigniting hope they'll reach Japan, Portuguese Catholics' secret empire in the east. However, having run out of sustenance and now down to a single vessel, although they started with 5 ships and over 500 crew, the captain gives up as he sees no hope in their mission and takes his life. Erasmus arrives at Anjiro and the samurais discover the weakened crew, who they later detain. Toranaga, together with his entourage, arrives at Osaka Castle, surprising the Council of Regents as he appears to have aligned power against them. Ishido welcomes him, but tension quickly arises as he is accused of taking the heir's mother, Lady Ochiba, hostage at his castle in Edo to ensure his safety. He calmly denies the accusations, saying Lady Ochiba's sister, who is his daughter-in-law, is in labor. Insinuating that Toranaga is a traitor, Ishido informs him that the council demands the lady's return in 7 days under the penalty of impeachment. Insulted, Tadayoshi, one of Toranaga's samurais, defends him in an outburst. Toranaga scolds him, which prompts Tadayoshi to ask permission to commit seppuku and end his line, and apologizes to the council. Recognizing Tadayoshi's bravery, Toranaga disapproves of the idea of him committing seppuku and promises to make sure his wife, who's General Hiromatsu's granddaughter, Fuji, lives. With a glaring disadvantage of 4-1, Toranaga chooses to stay and tasks Hiromatsu to go to Anjiro to check the Erasmus on his behalf. While the European Protestant crew worries for their safety, Blackthorne remains hopeful and assures them that they can convince the locals that they're just merchants lost at sea. Because of Tadayoshi's actions, his infant child is sentenced to death. However, Fuji is ordered to live and threatens to take her life if her son were to die. Mariko, Hiromatsu's daughter-in-law, intervenes and successfully talks her out of it, but the ritual continues and her young son meets his demise. Back in her quarters, Mariko weeps because, like Fuji, she was not permitted to join her father in death and was robbed of her purpose. On behalf of his crew, Blackthorne introduces himself to Lord Yabushiga as a merchant and pleads to be freed. But the Portuguese Catholic priest tasked to translate labels him as a pirate who has come to wage war against Japan and the Portuguese. Seeing through him and his intentions, Blackthorne tries his hardest to get his point across to the Japanese, even with the language barrier. Yabushige confiscates Erasmus, but orders Blackthorne to be bathed instead of executed, as there's no proof that he's a pirate. Daiyoin fears that when Ishido gets what he wants, he'll eliminate the 3 other lords on his side and Yechio. Although she recognizes Toranaga as a good man, she doubts if his Minowara bloodline is enough to stop him, so she encourages him to be a shogun. Toranaga vows to protect the child with his life, but reiterates that he doesn't seek the shogun title. One of Blackthorne's crew is executed, and his agonizing scream echoes throughout the village. Yabushige intends to keep Erasmus a secret from Toranaga and intends to use it to his advantage if war inevitably breaks out. However, the next day, Hiromatsu arrives and confiscates the ship and its contents, including Blackthorne, leading Yabushiga to suspect that there's a spy in the village. Spaniard navigator in service of the Portuguese, Vasco Rodriguez, who's in charge of sailing the Japanese ship back to Osaka, informs Blackthorne of Hiromatsu's power and unties Blackthorne's hands when the ship faces a storm. When Rodriguez gets washed overboard, Blackthorne challenges Yabushige to save him since he won't let him do it at the risk of losing both pilots. Yabushiga accepts but falls, and Blackthorne helps to save the pair. With his discovery of Blackthorne's rudder and journal, a recovering Rodriguez reveals to Blackthorne that he knows about his plan of destroying Catholic influences, both warning and advising him. Rodriguez gives Blackthorne's confiscated rudder and journal to Jesuit priests Delacqua and Martin Alvito, who can't simply hand them over to the Japanese, as not only will they learn of Blackthorne's piracy, but the thorough Toranaga will most probably uncover their secret trade in Macau. At Osaka, Blackthorne is presented to Toranaga, and during his interview, Father Alvito translates and Mariko confirms that Father Alvito is truthful in his translations. Toranaga learns that there are two Christian religions, Catholic and Protestant, and that Portugal and England are in conflict because the latter won't accept Catholicism. Shortly after Blackthorne denies piracy accusations, Ishido interrupts the interview, and Father Alvito warns Blackthorne not to speak. To please Ishido, Toranaga feigns disinterest and imprisons Blackthorne. Mariko's husband, Buntaro, demands to know why she's invited to meet Blackthorne, but Mariko doesn't disclose any information from the interview. Hiromatsu arrives, interrupting their conversation, and informs Mariko that Toranaga has called for another meeting. During the meeting, they assess the interview, and Mariko says that Father Alvito seems honest and advises Toranaga to guard against Blackthorne. Toranaga informs them that following his grandchild's birth, he has approved Lady Ochiba's request to return to Osaka, which will prompt the council to vote on their death. Fortunately, with the help of his spies, he has devised a plan to use Blackthorne to sow division between Ishido and Christian regents Kiyama and Ono, as he can only be impeached by a unified vote. In prison, Blackthorne meets Father Domingo, who informs him that Toranaga is isolated by his four rivals on the Council of Regents, with Ishido as their leader. Furthermore, Toranaga will soon be executed, and if he is Toranaga's ally, he will also not live long. Ishido goes about his day, fulfilling his tasks as the caretaker of the castle. Afterward, he meets up with the three regents in a meeting where they discuss Lady Ochiba's return to Osaka and Toranaga's fate. When they're about to vote, Kiyama and Ono bring up Blackthorne, saying imprisonment is not enough as they've heard reports of Blackthorne's execution of Christians. When Ishido asks for proof, Kiyama says that the priests have Blackthorne's private letters and demands Blackthorne's execution before he votes for Lord Toranaga's fate. Recognizing that Toranaga is making a move, Ishido questions Kiyama's loyalty to his god, asking if he'd still strongly defend his faith if the priests don't provide him with monetary benefits. Refusing to delay the voting, Ishido tells everyone to vote, but Ono firmly insists that Blackthorne must be executed. As Father Domingo and Blackthorne witness another prisoner getting executed, Father Domingo confides in him that the Jesuits don't care about anything but silk, gold, and guns, dominating trade with the Portuguese Black Ship. The Portuguese took advantage of the Chinese's hate of Japan, making all trade go through them and committing usury. When the Taiko tried to intervene, the church smuggled guns from a secret Macau base, inciting a rebellion. Blackthorne remembers that a man he met had told him about the Macau base filled with hundreds of Japanese soldiers who all converted to Catholicism. Realizing that the lords don't know, he decides to use the information for an opportunity to be released. Although Father Domingo wishes the best for him, he knows how difficult it is to play games with the lords and tells him it's a lost cause. Captain Ferreira, the Black Ship's captain, asks Father Alvito to appeal their departure to Toranaga, but Father Alvito refuses to rush Toranaga and only tells him that he will know once Toranaga permits them. Father Alvito talks to Mariko, expressing his surprise about her presence during the interview as he wasn't expecting Toranaga to involve her in his politics. When she says she doesn't wish to translate anymore, as she doesn't like how Blackthorne speaks to him, he praises her, saying she always has accurate instincts against people with evil intentions. Furthermore, he implies that Blackthorne has done way worse than what she thinks about him. Ishido visits Yabashige, who has declared fealty to Toranaga, although his loyalty can be bought, and asks him about Blackthorne. After relaying what he knows, Yabashige brings up that after Toranaga is gone, Ishido will have to contend with Kiyama, Ono, and their Christian support, which Ishido is at a disadvantage. With this, he suggests that they use Blackthorne and his weapons. When Ishido tells him that he reluctantly approved the demand for Blackthorne's execution, Yabashige devises a plan to prevent it. On his way to be executed, Blackthorne prays to God, asking for forgiveness. Disguised as bandits, Yabashige's men ambush the entourage and rescue Blackthorne. Yabashige then brings Blackthorne to Toranaga, saying he was passing by when Blackthorne was ambushed by bandits. In Blackthorne's second interview with Toranaga, who hopes he didn't have a hard time in prison, Mariko serves as the translator. When asked about the rulers and customs of his country, Blackthorne claims that he is not an enemy and that his queen will want to extend friendship. As requested, Blackthorne draws a world map, informing them of Japan and England's location. Upon mentioning that they sailed through Magellan's Pass, he reveals that they're the first outsiders to use it as it's a secret between the Spanish and the Portuguese. Furthermore, he reveals that sailing through it is safer as they have to avoid a secret Catholic Portuguese base for weapons in Macau, which was involved in the uprising years prior and is guarded by Japanese mercenaries called Ronin. When Toranaga requests for a detailed map with marks on all Portuguese bases, Blackthorne explains that Portugal and Spain signed a treaty 70 years ago, splitting undiscovered land between them, and that Japan belongs to the Portuguese. Furthermore, Spanish and Portuguese kings can legally claim non-Catholic lands they discover, and they intend to replace its government with a Catholic one. Shocked, Toranaga advises him to abandon his mission to destroy their common enemy as it is a lost cause, but he remains hopeful. To keep him safe, Toranaga makes Blackthorne stay in his quarters in West Palace, where Blackthorne sees the battle armor Toranaga saw in his dream. As president of foreign relations, Toranaga holds off the Portuguese black ship's departure from Osaka and brings up the prophets and secret bases to Father Alvito, insisting that he should learn more about them before conducting further negotiations. Toranaga conceals himself in Blackthorne's quarters, staging a decoy on the bed. Later that night, an assassin comes into his quarters, whom he quickly defeats. Because of this, Toranaga realizes that the target is Blackthorne and is sure that Ishido is not the one behind it. These were just the first 2 episodes of the series. They're on FX Hulu and are released weekly. What do you guys think of the series so far?
Subscribe for more videos like this. Turn on notifications and leave a like. It really helps the channel.